Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. Yes, the regular season may be over, but man, it's just getting started. We have NFL playoffs coming up, but we can't get by without doing the reaction show. We got Anthony Cervino with us today. Anthony will be with us every Monday through the Super Bowl. Maybe that week between the Super Bowl and the conference championship game, we'll decide. And then there's nothing to react to, but we'll see how that one shakes out. Anyway, Anthony Cervino, how did Week 18 go?
Good. I mean, it was really exciting for a Week 18 that's normally kind of dull. Teams not really playing for much. A lot of these teams came to play football, whether they're playing spoiler, just the New York Giants off the top of my head. That was the best game they played all season.
You know, when I was talking to people about that game, I was like, take the Giants. Play Tyrod Taylor in DFS. Now they ran in a couple. They couldn't. Wandale got tackled inside the 5 a couple times. But I'm saying Brian Daboll, he played this team. He knows how bad they are on defense. He will have a game plan. He will get after them. And then, wow, no DeAndre Swift, no Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown goes out with a knee injury. No status on that. Hurts bangs up his finger. Wow.
I'm just confused about why. The Eagles sat a couple of guys. They had some starters. I was just very confused on what the hell they were doing.
Did it remind you of the Los Angeles Chargers last year? They had that Week 18 game against Denver, and they put their starters in, but they didn't play. I mean, they didn't come to play, and Mike Williams gets hurt. Gets knocked out for the playoffs. It was the weirdest thing, and they got smoked in that game. It totally reminds me of that game. It, like you said, it was like organizational chaos. Did not know what was going on.
And it comes on Nick Sirianni. And I know he's got them to a Super Bowl. They've had a lot of success, but is this the real Nick Sirianni? And that's my question.
Anthony, how long did Doug Peterson last after the Super Bowl that he took them to?
Year. It's Philly. It's Philly.
Oh, man. I thought of that. This morning. I was working out, and I'm thinking to myself, and I think it was in the gym, they have the TVs, and I'm doing my cardio so I can see that. And I saw Sirianni in there. I'm thinking to myself, wow, you were in the Super Bowl last year, and I could see a world where you are done. All right, let's go through these from the beginning of the weekend because it started with Saturday. And we had a pre-playoff game. Houston and Indy was for a playoff spot. Winner was in, loser was out. Now, as we found out later, if the Jaguars lost, you know how that went, the winner of that game would win the division and get a home game. What a bonus there. So Houston beats the Colts 23-19 in this game. Start with the Houston side. Very interesting. They call a shot play. I believe it's the first play of the game. If that was the first series, Nico Collins, long touchdown. Boom. They're off and they're running. Honestly, after that, Nico still did his damage. But that offense was not humming in this game. They did not, other than that first play, they weren't great. They scored 23 points. Indy's not a good defense. What did you think of, did they just play to just grind out the win? Because I thought they should have scored more points. Any thoughts about Houston?
Houston, to me, they're a dangerous football team in the playoffs just because I feel like when they're on, they can beat anybody. And you said, their offense didn't play but great. They still put up 23 points. That just shows how dangerous this team is going to be at home, and they have a home playoff game. So you can make a case they maybe come through this weekend with a win. I like what they're doing. Now, they obviously missed Tank Dell. They're a really young football team. It's hard for them to run the football sometimes. So obviously, C.J. Stroud's going to have to pitch a perfect game. Like, to me, like the easiest bet to make this past weekend was the Texans' money line. They had the better quarterback. And yes. I like Gardner Minshew. I like what he's done this year. But the better quarterback, C.J. Stroud, they ultimately won the game. But, I'm not going to just lay down and I just don't think they're going to lay down and die for anybody.
No. Now, each of these teams, except for the Ravens and the 49ers, most of them have a fatal flaw. And Houston, it is the defense. Last year, they were very good against the pass, horrible against the run. Now, some people says because you could run on them, you didn't have to pass on them. But this year, they're very good against run, although Jonathan Taylor smoked them. We'll talk about them in a second.
Yeah.
But their pass defense, and look, I know there's moments where they look good. You could get to them easily to pass them. That's their fatal flaw. Do you see that the fatal flaw, the pass defense?
Yeah. And again, young team, new head coach, but that's where you can beat this team.
Yes. All right. Very quickly, because the Colts are out. Look, Jonathan Taylor, it was a great game plan. They ran him 30 times for $188, and it was very clear that Shane Steichen did not want to put the ball in Gardner Minshew's head, did not want to put the season in his hands. He was not going to trust him with the season. Their line's been blocking well. Braden Smith left the game again, the right tackle early, but they went with Taylor. But here are two questions I ended up with in that game. On that last drive, and they were driving, and even if they converted that fourth down at the end, they just kept running. I'm not convinced they would have scored a touchdown because they were unwilling to pass the ball. And of course, so that's the first one. Did they run too much on the last drive? And then they take the timeout on fourth down, which they would have needed that timeout if they didn't convert on fourth down, which they didn't. And then everybody's asking the same question. How the heck do you call the play to Tyler Goodson? Season on the line, third string running back. He was open, should have been a completion, but a big player in a big moment on a huge stage, is that really where you want to end your season? Go ahead, Anthony.
I'll start here. I get they don't want to put the ball in Minshew's hands. It was in his hands for the majority of the season, and he brought this team this far, exceeding expectations. My second issue, yes, Jonathan Taylor, he had I'll call it a career-defining game. To me, it made me remember how special he is, because with all the injuries and recency bias, I'm like, how good is he really? He is a game-changing running back. So I get featuring him, keep Stroud on the side. I get all that. But the one player that was missing that I think could have put the Colts over the top is Michael Pittman. He has been on fire all season long, Michael Pittman. Now, granted, the game he's been knocked out against Pittsburgh, he hasn't been the same since, but he's also hasn't been heavily targeted since that game, where we have multiple games. I think most of the games he played and he was healthy, at least 10 targets, super effective. Where the hell was he? How do you a win and go home game, 6 targets, one of the fewest outputs of the year, and 5 for 44. You want to talk about Goodson. Where was Michael Pittman and where was Jonathan Taylor on that play?
Right on the sidelines was Jonathan Taylor. And, with Pittman, that Pittsburgh game, he got knocked out in the first quarter with a concussion, and he already had 79 yards in that game.
Yeah.
In the first quarter. And anyway, selfishly, that one cost me a number of same-game parlays. I had Nico. I bumped Nico to over 100 yards. I said there was no number that wasn't going to be high enough for Nico. I took Dalton Schultz over 4.5 receptions. He had that one drive where he caught 4, got him to 5. And then I had C.J. Stroud over 263.5. He had 264. I needed the Pittman one, though. I had Pittman on just the base yardage. Didn't come close. All right, that's selfishly. Let's move out of there. Season's over for them. Hopefully Anthony Richardson's back healthy next year, and we'll see how that shakes out. We did talk about the Eagles already, but and so I don't want to spend a lot of time more on them because we opened with them. But again, we're going to find out what A.J. Brown's knee injury situation is. It seems like they should get Devontae Smith back, hopefully. DeAndre Swift had an illness, so there should be no issue there. Just, again, is the defense we know is horrible. They might be able to hold up against the Bucs, but is the offense right now, is it broken?
Something's off, right? Like it just doesn't look right, and I don't feel like it's looked right for a couple of weeks now.
No. And it's been crumbling over time. And, it was Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, never got into a rhythm with this offense. There were individual plays that worked. Shot play to A.J. Brown, great, it worked. There were these one-offs, but they had so much talent, the one-offs worked. But they were not stringing together consistent drives. They weren't building on things. They weren't using plays to set up other plays. And now defenses realized that there were specific shot plays and big plays they were going for, and that had been out on film. So now when teams realize those are coming and you could slow down a number of them, they go back to having to run real offense. And because of the flow in the setup, it's just not there, Anthony.
Yeah, and the offense, let's call it what it is. It hasn't looked right, I would say, since midseason, maybe week 10. I'll always feel like Hurts has not been 100%. I don't feel like he's 100%. And yeah, even a 90%, 85% Hurts, he's probably faster than most quarterbacks. And you don't notice it until when you're watching him play, and he just doesn't have that same burst or that same aggressiveness that he normally would. And I think it's a trickle-down effect because the enemy defense, they also know that. They can also watch the same film we do, and they're like, all right, they don't have that threat, right? Because at times Jalen Hurts is just as much of a threat as Lamar Jackson. When you don't have that 100%, you game plan against that differently.
Exactly correct. So look, they're playing the Bucs this week. The Bucs make the playoffs. That's our next story. They outlast the Panthers 9-0. They don't score a single touchdown against the Panthers. Now, the Panthers are a decent pass defense. They're a bad run defense. And this just kind of shows us Rachaad White was great for fantasy this year. And he did have some good games. Overall, he's not a good running back. He is a replacement level running back. He's probably a better receiving back in the committee. But I want to point out that the Bucs lucked out. DJ Chark, for whatever he was thinking, trying to stretch the ball over the goal line, he lost control of it. That was like going to be a touchdown. So they get a touchback. That's the dumbest rule anywhere. And we've seen that again a couple weeks in a row. And then Carolina's kicker was out. So they had a backup kicker miss the field goal. Well, there were 10 points right there, and the Bucs were not scoring other than field goals. Now, the only thing that really worked for them late in the game, they were able to grind the running game, and White helped them kill the clock. But this is a team going into the playoffs, not a lot of impressive victories. The offense is disjointed. Mike Evans has been held to 70 or fewer yards, I believe, in 4 of his last 5 games. Teams are bracketing him more than ever, and because they realize, what else are they going to do? Chris Godwin's a star, but they're not getting him the ball in enough scenarios. He's had a couple big yardage games, but they don't consistently allow him to punish defenses. And then teams are glad to let Rachaad White run the ball because eventually, especially if they're playing a better defense, they're in trouble. So are the Bucs a complete fraud here, or is there more to it?
I don't know if they're a complete fraud because its offense was clicking at points this year. And a lot of it very 1-2 dimensional. Rachaad White, Mike Evans, once in a while Godwin would have a game, or one of the other supporting members. You would have Ottman would have a game, but it was really a 2-funnel type of a system. I think Baker Mayfield is coming back down to earth a little bit. And to me, that's you bring in, well, why aren't they getting Godwin involved? I don't think Baker can read or provide enough to get both of these big time wide receivers involved, which is why Rachaad White had such a big season, fantasy-wise as a receiver out of the backfield, because he was going to get a lot of those Baker checkdowns. I was actually on Godwin more because he's in the slot, and Baker had success with slot receivers. And then Mike Evans, he's just a special guy, and Baker popped a little bit. And it was all the hype where, if you're, you hear national media, you got to give Baker Mayfield a contract to stay. Do we?
Well,
because this is also the past couple games, this is the downside of Baker Mayfield.
Well, with Chris Godwin, the problem was they were lining him up frequently outside. They didn't put him in the slot. They were rotating the other dudes in the slot.
Trey Palmer.
And the problem was when you're doing that, all of a sudden you take the best of Chris Godwin. He's a good outside receiver. He's fine. But like you pointed out, Baker Mayfield's history, you go back to the Jarvis Landry days, he was averaging almost 1,000 yards a season. And it's Jarvis Landry. I know he's a nice player, but he wasn't this, he wasn't like a superstar. I mean, obviously a wonderful player, but Chris Godwin has like tons more talent and skill. And if they had just simply let him play the slot, that would have given Baker Mayfield even more run. But anyway, that's not getting solved now. But I do have concerns. Philly got a nice draw. If there's any team that you want to face, it's them, because Mayfield's going to make mistakes. Either team can win this game. but I don't think either of these teams is winning 2 games. Are you on board with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And I'm with you here. I don't think I give an edge. Like if I'm Vegas, I'm not sure where the line's open, but this is pretty damn close to a pick 'em.
A 2.5 point Philly favorites. It opened at 1.5. It got bet up to 2.5 pretty quickly. Yeah. Packers are next. Look, the Bears have been playing really good defense for a while. And I know the Packers only scored 17 points. They only scored 17 points again, 2 Dontavian Wicks touchdowns. But Jordan Love looked really good here. And it was taking advantage of Wicks. Jaden Reed, big yards. I believe he had 89 yards. Aaron Jones, his 3rd straight game with 120 scrimmage yards. He is playing very well, and it's really benefited him that A.J. Dillon's been unavailable. Either he was available for partial games or like the last one, he's out. And in that case, when Jones gets the ball, Jones, in my opinion, never stopped being a star. Of course, when he was hurt, that was a problem. So offensively, is this an offense, and they're playing Dallas this week, is this an offense that can make some noise in the playoffs?
It depends on what version of the Cowboys defense shows up, but it's in Dallas, and we know how Dallas plays at home. This game could get out of hand, and I get it's the playoffs. Now, LaFleur's Packers and when Aaron Rodgers has had Dallas's number for his whole career, but Aaron Rodgers isn't there anymore. That wasn't LaFleur. That was Aaron Rodgers. I just think Mike McCarthy revenge game. Dallas Cowboys, 20 years of Aaron Rodgers sticking it to him type of revenge game this week. And it's all well and good. You can skate by a regressive NFC North that with no Kirk Cousins, no Aaron Rodgers, an overhyped Chicago Bears team, and the Lions were your best team. But now you're going to go into the postseason to the number 2 seed Dallas Cowboys, a team who has not lost a home game in like 2 years. So good luck. And I'm not trying to be a confident Cowboys fan, but this could get really ugly. I have very little trust in the Cowboys in January. This one could get out of hand.
Now, the Packers, I'll say one thing. Their offensive line has pass blocked very well. And that's with Bakhtiari being gone for most of the season. They just always have dudes on that line, and they always are put a functional unit. Pass protection is good. But if Dallas can crack that offensive line, I do think that could be a horrible outcome for Jordan Love, because the protection and the schemed up plays have really allowed him to excel. And he's a good quarterback. There's no shade on Jordan Love here. He is doing exactly what he needs to do. But Dallas is going to have to get pass rush home on him, because if they don't, Matt LaFleur is drawing up plays that will, and he has a number of productive receivers. That could be problematic. And if Aaron Jones gets going on the ground here, that offers another layer of problem. So to me, tell me if you agree or disagree. It's about the Dallas pass rush in this one.
I do agree. And a lot of it's always about the Dallas pass rush, because when that's working, all of a sudden the quarterbacks, they're making errant decisions, and, their defensive backs, very opportunistic defense. It gives them the opportunity to make plays. So it's always about that pass rush. And Micah Parsons, you want to say he's the best in the game. He has games where he disappears. He needs to show up in the playoffs. Now, if you look at some of these games of the bad Jordan Love, 2-3 interceptions, is that what we're going to see out of Jordan Love? Like on the road against Vegas, week 5, he throws 3. And we know at that point, they're a pretty good pass defense. Detroit, not the best pass defense in the world, but they can get after the quarterback. 2 interceptions there. So we also know Jordan Love could have some, mistakes in him.
Yes. And so that's going to be the idea that now Dallas, they survived an early scare. They fell behind 10-7 to Washington. And you're like, this last year, I remember when Washington kicked the snot out of Dallas late in the season. And now like, oh man, here we go. Well, Dallas turned things quickly around, really just put the pedal on the metal, and they ended up blowing them out. Dak 4 touchdowns, CeeDee Lamb 105 scrimmage yards, couple of touchdowns. Jake Ferguson, Tony Pollard solid in this one. So and they were missing linemen in this one. Zach Martin was out, and who missing Tyler Smith as well. Tyler Smith's out.
One of the Smiths was out.
Tyler Smith
and
was out.
then,
He had the plantar fascia thing.
Gilmore got a little bit banged up. I think they just held him out for the rest of the games. They're saying he's going to be healthy. Rico Dowdle looked pretty good. He had almost 100 total yards on 12 touches. I think can Green Bay, that's the other question. Even if Green Bay scores points, can they stop Dallas at home?
And that's the thing. So Joe Barry, great. He held the Bears to 192 scrimmage yards. It looked like more, but they took the sack yardage and there was under 200 yards. But again, ultimately, Justin Fields is not a weekly consistent guy you can count on, and divisional matchup, and they've seen him, they know him, and Barry was able to slow that down. But otherwise, this guy is not put together a defense that has given anybody problems. There's often communication breakdowns, plenty of yards after the catch. They tend to like to put a shell up and let you work underneath. I think with CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson, I think Dallas is very happy to oblige them.
Yeah, I did not want to see the Rams. And I know that was the outcome if the 49ers won that football game. I did not want to see the Rams in round one. I get that we handled the Rams earlier this year, but this is a different McVay Rams team coming out. And that's the last team I wanted to see outside the 49ers in round one. I know the 49ers couldn't happen, but I did not want to see the Rams in round one. So let the Rams go to Detroit. I think I think that's a wrap. I think Lions are one and done, just to get a little bit predictive here. And I'll take the Rams in the next round at home. I just don't want to play the Rams out of the gate because that team's red hot.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And so with the Rams, are the Rams dangerous enough to make a deep run?
Yep.
Or is there lack of pass defense? Is it gonna bury them?
I think they're dangerous because they can score with you. The fact that they have the firepower to score with anybody, that could mask a bad defense. And what also makes them dangerous, they still have the core from their Super Bowl. You still have Stafford, McVay, Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp. That is your core. The only other player that's missing is Andrew Whitworth.
Yes.
Of that core, and Ramsey, but he was more of a stopgap. But they have their core people who've been there and won a damn championship. And if you're, I think McVay's been to 2, and Aaron Donald's been to 2.
Other side of that ball, and I know this isn't the game preview, but the Lions, they took care of business. They couldn't get the Dallas loss, which they needed, and so now they are at home for one. And they do draw those Rams. And there's a ton of narratives in this game. We'll be talking about those all week long. But the Lions, that pass defense has become so bad. Yeah. Look, 2 games. Nick Mullins is averaging 400 yards. Nick Mullins. And when Sean McVay is cutting up tape on this one, he is going to have so many options in the menu open to him. I just don't know how the Lions keep them under 30 points.
I want to start here. I just want to, because Dan Campbell, he's gone for it more than any other coach on the other side of the field on 4th down. It came back. He got too cute against Dallas. Blame it on the refs. I think he just got too cute, too aggressive. Mm-hmm. And, this was a meaningless game. In order for them to get that 2 seed, Dallas and Philly had to lose. The odds were against him, but he loses Sam Laporta. Okay. I think I think it's starting to come back and bite him a little bit. And the fact that they spent this whole, they had the social media team kind of making and it's fun on social media when you're bringing up the Taylor Decker and Skipper not reporting, and they're throwing the play to Skipper during the game. Get that out of your head and forget about it.
Oh my gosh. You're right about that.
Why are you still thinking about it a week ago?
Oh my gosh, you are so right. You're
because
right.
If they go to Dallas in a couple weeks, that's still going to be in their head, and I think that's gonna beat him.
Oh my gosh. Offensively, look, Sam Laporta, we don't know the prognosis. As of right now, Monday, early morning, it would seem very pessimistic that he's going to be on the field. I would not expect him as of right now. Now, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. But that said, the Rams, very inconsistent, if not weak, options on the outside. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, a star. But if no Laporta, more attention on St. Brown. And if the one thing the Rams can do defensively, they are a very good run defense. That is what the Lions like to do. And if it's a good run defense, that doesn't have to sell out to stop the run. And now St. Brown is really the only person they have to consistently worry about. And who knows Jared Goff better than Sean McVay? And knowing to tell his defensive coaches what he doesn't like to see. As good as Brian Johnson, I'm missing the offensive coordinator's name, Ben Johnson. Much as Ben Johnson has been dialing up the hits, this is the one coach who knows exactly what he wants. Concern level?
This is why I didn't want to see the Rams. I want the Rams to go to Detroit, and not only from the narrative, the whole revenge game narrative, but I think this is going to be a great game to watch. And I don't know if I want to see the Lions because they can match up well with Dallas in terms of toughness. And I do think if it gets into a shootout, Dallas can probably overtake the Rams because they have the better defense. So personally, I want the Rams to go knock out Detroit this week. So yeah, if I'm the Lions, I'm concerned. If I'm Jared Goff, I'm concerned because I don't want to see this team. Plus, as hot as they've been playing in the second half of the year, because they were left. I had the Rams left for dead.
Right. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a crazy playoffs. I see we have Anthony and Randy. I appreciate you guys. Anthony saying Raheem Morris and Ben Johnson would be interesting. You have to see. Yep, no doubt. Yep, no doubt. Now let's talk. That last night, Sunday night game, Bills-Dolphins. A lot to unpack here. The Bills had a really hot run for a little while. They've won their recent games. Honestly, they don't look great. They're winning, and that's all that matters. But ultimately, they have the 2 seed. And supposedly, as of today, 6 days away or whatever, there's supposed to be really bad weather, which benefits them at home. But that said, end of the first half, Josh Allen throws to the middle of the field to Ty Johnson, gets knocked down, tackle inside the 1, the half runs out. They lose points. They score on a crazy deflected pass where Trent Sherfield, the ball's up in the air, and he's able to drag his feet in. Deontay Hardy, punt return touchdown. Allen puts up these numbers, 359-2, but 2 more picks. And bad bonehead decisions like that one at the end of the half.
Yeah.
How far could the Bills go?
I think the Bills, if in a perfect world, perfect game, they could beat anybody in the NFL. They have that much firepower. Do I think I don't know how to word this because I am not exactly the biggest Josh Allen guy, but I also know he has some level of special in him. I just don't know how much special he has in him in big games. Granted, this was a big game. On the other side, it was against the Miami Dolphins, who haven't been in a lot of big games anyway. This isn't Kansas City. This isn't Cincy. I don't know who Josh Allen is. What I do know is outside of that punt return, we had 2 quarterbacks, overhyped quarterbacks, throwing the ball to the wrong team. Is it concerning that Buffalo's pass rush couldn't sack Tua once? That's a concern. Is it a concern to me that Miami, who's down their 2 best pass rushers, got to Josh Allen 3 times? Yes, so there's a lot of concern here, but at the same time, I think either one of those teams can go to a Super Bowl.
Now, the Dolphins. Look, I'm sound mean here, but it is what it is. I've been saying for years, Tua has a pop gun for an arm. Anybody can throw it about 70 yards. Anybody can throw it. Any quarterback can throw it 70 yards. That doesn't mean you can put it on a rope. It doesn't. You see it. He gets it up quick, gets it downfield, and just let Tyreek run under it. He's got a pop gun for an arm. He can't drive the ball to the outside perimeter. Cannot drive it there. So defenses, we've already known this. Defenses that have the coaching and the ability to cloud the middle of the field and take away his first read. He is a big time struggler. Also, we saw it yesterday, that pop gun. Well, he didn't get it out in front of Tyreek Hill by the 7-8 yards, or Tyreek outrun everybody. Easy interception. So margin for error, very low. He has not been good in road games. And right now, it looks like early forecast. We're talking freezing temperatures in Kansas City. Who knows if we get precipitation? But Tua, to me, needs to be in a pristine environment to have any chance for that pop gun arm to do any damage. Thoughts?
Part of okay. There was no, Waddle. I don't want to make excuse, but Waddle didn't play.
Right.
Mostert didn't play, which I think they don't miss Mostert as much. A little bit of that power run, but H.S. obviously, what he's doing. But without Jalen Waddle, right? You got Chosen Anderson and Braxton Berrios and Cedric Wilson. You can literally the good defensive coordinators are going to take out Tyreek Hill. Past couple games since that Tennessee injury, Tyreek Hill has been dropping passes, and he dropped another one last night.
Yes, 2 actually, I think, but yes,
yeah, but crucial against Dallas last night. So yeah, like there's a level of concern is how 1 to 2 dimensional is the Miami Dolphins.
Now,
where it's like you got one of the running backs and Tyreek popping. And that's basically and Waddle doesn't necessarily have to have a big year, but he's still a former number 1 pick,
correct,
over 100 catches in his rookie season, and you have to guard him, right? Because let's say, okay, we're going to let Jalen Waddle beat us. A couple of deep balls, the defense are going to start playing with him again, and then, okay, like it's just going to be a free fall, and they're missing that dimension.
They are totally missing that dimension. Now, for this specific game against Kansas City, I do think Miami, though, they have a big edge if Mostert's healthy, because I believe they could run the ball all day on KC, and KC could never sell out to stop it because of Tyreek Hill. And probably Waddle's probably get Waddle back for this game. Don't know for sure. But if that's the case, I don't like Tua Tagovailoa in the playoffs. Don't like him at all. But in this specific game at Kansas City, and Vic Fangio's lost his 2 best edge rushers, but we saw last night, he'll dial up the blitz. And he'll at least hurry the quarterback. He can put a complicated game plan in. And the Chiefs, I have no confidence in their offense at all right now. So it would not stun me if Miami goes on the road and beats this version of the Chiefs. Am I crazy?
Not at all, because this version of the Chiefs is not impressing me, but also this version of the Dolphins, they're not the Dolphins from the first 10 weeks of the season. It has how many games in a row under like 25 points or under 20 points. So this isn't exactly the most impressive version of the Dolphins. And when the Dolphins were in their midst of just crushing people, they did play Kansas City, and Kansas City kind of held them in check. So it's like, and Kansas City's offense didn't have to be prolific, right? They scored all their points in the first half, shut out in the second half in England.
There's a defensive touchdown in there too, right? It was an overseas game, and that's always an oddity because we never know how it impacts one team or the other. I want to say in that game, Kansas City traveled earlier, but it's all those weird things we have in international. But you're right, and Kansas City did nothing in the second half. Yeah. It's just a whole lot to unpack there. Before we go out, Anthony is mentioning Tyreek back to KC, Stafford to Detroit. Yeah, the NFL has to love this schedule. There is no doubt about it. It's a wonderful thing to see.
And McCarthy, Green Bay.
Yes, right. That McCarthy, Green Bay, and then we even had Philly and Tampa played in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and Jalen Hurts. He really, that was when he was learning to become something. Yeah. And so I'm sure there's a little memory of how bad he looked like, and now he became a much better quarterback the next year. So that was, but the NFL is going to be a weekend. A couple points before we get out of here. And I know you brought these up in a message between us. Jaguars, the division was there for them. Look, I bet the Titans. Didn't think twice. I took the 3.5 points. I wasn't an idiot, but I didn't need them. But for a while, I thought I might have needed them. But there was no way Vrabel wasn't covering 3.5 at home in that one. But the whole point is, the whole offseason, we are going to be talking about Trevor Lawrence. We still see the occasional bonehead play, but I still wonder how much of it is the horrific game planning of Press Taylor. And I don't know how much Doug Peterson's involved with it, but they, for brief periods of time, figured out how to get Calvin Ridley going, put him in stacks, put him in motion, but they never kept going back to it. They end up being a very conservative offense, and they couldn't run block, so Travis Etienne never had a chance to get going. So between the line and the coaching, but how much of it falls on Trevor Lawrence? Is he the real deal, Anthony? What are we going to make him before we hit this offseason?
we look at, and I'll always give Trevor Lawrence the year one mulligan with Urban Meyer, right? So you can make, to me, I like to look at it. Okay, next year is going to be his year 3 in this system with Peterson. I think this year, Trevor Lawrence is a tough dude, durable, but he was playing through a multitude of injuries. The offensive line took a massive step back. And let's think back to Dak Prescott. He led the league in interceptions last year. People had him left for dead, and he comes back, and what does he do? He leads the league in touchdown passes. There's been a number of quarterbacks that people will just, turn their nose up at because it's easy, or it's because, this is the same, and I'm talking about Twitter, social media. This is the same app that cries that Justin Fields should be the starter long term, but you want to give up on Trevor Lawrence. I'm not ready to give up Trevor Lawrence or the Jaguars. I just, I think he needs another year in this system, and they need to get him some offensive line help.
Absolutely. So I am on board. I mean, I don't know that he's going to be a transcendent player, but I think he'll be a very good quarterback for a long time. But again, like you said, they need to do better for him. The organization
has Justin Herbert earned all the praise he gets? This was the year, no excuse. You got the Golden Boy OC. You got another weapon, and this was supposed to be the year for Justin Herbert. And what do we have? Another excuse, fire Brandon Staley. I mean, come on now.
And I'm not arguing this at all, but it really sucked. They busted on Quentin Johnston. Oh my gosh. Hey, you never know. And then Mike Williams was going off. And of course, season-ending injury. And the funny thing with that, Anthony, was when I was invested in Mike Williams. I look back at his game logs. He had missed games last year, and in his first year, he missed games. In between, is a bunch of 16 games played, like 15 and 16. Yeah. So it wasn't like every year Mike Williams was the time. We remember the highlights where he gets knocked on the field and he's out for a little bit and he comes back in. But it wasn't like he has been an injury-prone player who's missed games every year. But man, just the hit they took, and then Austin Eckler with the high ankle sprain. So you might be right, and you're right. I think we give Herbert a lot of latitude, but again, just like with Trevor got Lawrence,
hurt, where's Trevor's excuse?
I'm saying just like with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, I think both incomplete grades on both of them. But you're right. I think people have given Justin Herbert more rope because I think people remember, like, you remember that Raiders game on that Sunday night when they were playing for a playoff spot, and it was like consistent 3rd and long, and the dude just like rope 18 yards, rope 22 yards. He can put on a clinic. Yeah. That very few quarterbacks can. Like with 8 men dropped, the dude just dropping dimes. But again, I think they both potentially could be amazing quarterbacks, but like you're intimating, both need better. And I don't know. Even Mahomes at this point, right? If the infrastructure crashed on him, and look what happened to him this year.
The only person you can make a case didn't need a lot of offensive help early was Tom Brady, but he also had like the defense.
Yes.
When he didn't really have a lot of, like, Deion Branch was his best guy, like Troy Brown, like Tom Brady, but there's only one of them. Even Joe Montana had a multitude of weapons. If you go back and remember John Taylor, the tight end, Jerry Rice, and the running back, even Rathman, the fullback, like Joe Montana had it all. Like, these quarterbacks need help.
Tight end, Brent what's his last? Brent Jones. Oh my God. I love Brent Jones. All right. When we look back at that with Tom Brady, he could play to such a long career shelf life. The super processor of a brain. The defenses will always give you something, right? Brady was the king of knowing what the defense would give you, and he would take it. And the problem with a lot of quarterbacks is defenses will give you short stuff. You got to run a 15-play drive to score. And usually there's a mess up and the drive breaks down. Brady was the master at just knowing to not bonk on give you 5, give you 7. And Brady was the king at taking that. I cannot tip my hat to that man enough because, and Aaron Rodgers, different type of quarterback, but Rodgers often is good at that as well. Final words there.
You broke up there for a second.
Oh, well, let's move on. Last thing for today. Falcons start out hot. They had a lead early in this one. 71-yard touchdown to Bijan Robinson. They had a 14-7 lead. It's about all we had of it. 48 points later, including scoring from the victory formation. Thank you, Jameis Winston, overriding your coach. Beautiful. Anyway, Arthur Smith's out of a job now. What are you hoping for in terms of their hiring of someone? And maybe not a name, but what are you hoping for in their new job search?
They need to bring in somebody that understands what they have in terms of skill position, understands what they have invested, understand that this offensive line is a really good unit. And I almost look at Atlanta as the Lions a couple years ago, where they started building. They had really nice pieces. The foundation was there, and it just turned out to be a head coach, Jared Goff, away. Well, who was that head coach, and where is their Jared Goff? Because I think what really shot Atlanta in the foot this year, you can talk about Arthur Smith and all of his bad decisions, and not. You went into this year with probably your job on the line. You had to understand that you're in that building with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. Like, that was probably the first issue. So, they need to figure out quarterback. They need to figure out head coach. And, these guys are in their prime. They're on rookie deals. That's not going to happen forever. You got to figure it out now. So I don't know what the answer is, but they got to figure it out.
I do want to see Justin Fields there. I believe he's got a live arm. I believe the mobility will help. I believe Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson. I think with him, that would be a fun fit.
I wanted Lamar there last offseason. If he wasn't in Baltimore, Atlanta was my landing spot.
It totally was. And I don't think at any point any franchise thought that the Ravens were going to let him go. And it takes an incredible amount of work from your personnel department. It sounds easy, but to put together a contract offer with all the details needed, it's something that's time consuming. And if there's not going to be juice from the squeeze at the end, then I think that's really what happened there. But I don't think he was in it because that exclusive rights was restricted, whatever the free agency term was. Yeah. He was never going to be free. But anyway, it would have been beautiful. But I'd like to see that. Anthony Cervino, before I have people tell you where you're at, I'm going to go over the show schedule for this week. Tomorrow, we'll be on Tuesday. We'll do a little more talk of the pregame for these 6 playoff games. We're only going to do a Friday show. Friday, we'll get you some prop betting advice, maybe some gambling advice, get you set for that. There'll be 3 shows this week. That's how we're looking at that. I'll be on Sirius XM tonight, 8 to 10 Eastern, and Thursday, 8 to 10 Eastern. So if you have time to join me for that, that would be great. Anthony Cervino, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
All of my audio, live video work is at fffaceoff.com. And I do some content here over at RotoWire, obviously, as well. And follow me at The Real NFL Guru on social media.
Remember, Anthony Cervino will be back with us every Monday through the Super Bowl, getting these reactions to the playoff games, getting us all excited for what's going forward. If you want a free trial at RotoWire, go to rotowire.com/Jim. No credit card needed. I'm putting up a playoff challenge article that should publish Tuesday, so you can check that out. Get ready for it if you're doing a fantasy football challenge. For Anthony Cervino, I'm Jim Coventry. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day.